After a long weekend with my family, I stumbled back into my apartment in Seattle, utterly drained. Everything seemed perfectly normal until I pulled up my banking app to make the usual transfer for my electric bill. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the balance, just $53.52. I blinked and double-checked, thinking my tiredness was messing with me, but no, the numbers were the same. That same account held over $10,000 only 2 days ago. I felt all the color drain from my face. Panic set in, and my hands began to shake. I quickly dialed the bank's number. After going through some security checks, the agent told me the transactions had been made from a device that was already logged in, using the same IP address as my computer. I felt my blood run cold. Without wasting another second, I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to my mom's house. The very house that had just hosted our biggest family get-together of the year. The laughter and warmth from earlier still echoed in my mind, but now I felt a knot in my stomach. I reached for a glass of water, trying to steady myself, my heart still thudding in my chest from the shock. Back already? My sister Vanessa's voice rang out from the living room, light and carefree, as if nothing had happened. She was on the couch, sipping wine, completely at ease, with no hint of concern. "I just checked my account," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm, though the tightness in my throat made it impossible. Daniel, my sister's husband, emerged from the kitchen holding a can of soda. He leaned casually against the fridge, his expression a mix of amusement and indifference. Daniel's voice broke through the silence, a smirk playing on his lips. "We needed that money more than you did, Nora." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood frozen, shocked, unable to say a word. Vanessa giggled, as if I was overreacting, and shrugged dismissively. "You're being dramatic," she said flatly. "You've got a steady job, no responsibilities, and zero debt." I looked at my mom, sitting quietly in the corner, reading. Her face was calm, almost indifferent. "Did you know about this, Mom?" Without lifting her eyes, she let out a soft sigh, replying like I had brought up something petty. "You're too emotional. You've got more than enough. Why not help your family a bit?" I glanced at Dad, still buried behind his newspaper. Without lifting his gaze, he muttered, "Keep your tone down. It's a family issue." "But how did you get access to my bank account?" Vanessa casually shrugged. "I used Mom's computer, and your account was still logged in. You didn't log out." She said it so casually, as if I were the one at fault, and what they did was completely justified. My hands balled into fists, my nails digging into my palms. My heart pounded. Daniel shrugged nonchalantly. "We didn't buy anything extravagant, just rent, groceries, and basic needs. Otherwise, we'd be starving." I looked around at their faces, no guilt, no apologies, just silence. "Why would you do this to me?" I whispered, but it was clear no one gave a damn. Vanessa tossed her hair casually and said, "You can earn it back. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is." I picked up my bag in silence. No one moved. No one cared enough to stop me or ask if I was okay. Mom didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Don't forget about dinner on Sunday." I walked to the door, my steps heavy, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. I froze at the doorway, hand on the knob, and looked back one last time. If you all think I'll just let this go, you're dead wrong. Vanessa laughed softly. "Oh, please, Nora. We needed help. You're not the only one with struggles." I stayed silent. The sound of rain was nothing compared to the chaos inside me. I drove through the downpour, clutching the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The red light blinked ahead, but my head was reeling from their cold words. You weren't using it anyway. We had no choice. No remorse. Not a single word of regret. It was like living inside a nightmare I couldn't escape. I couldn't go home, not yet. I needed space to breathe. I pulled into the parking lot at Green Lake, the spot where I usually jog on weekends. I shut off the car, leaned back in silence, and tapped open my banking app. The balance stared back at me, cold and brazen, just like Vanessa's expression. I wasn't even surprised anymore, just bitterly let down. I'd expected at least some decency. At 26, I landed a marketing manager role at a top pharmaceutical firm. As I was still finding my footing in the role, Vanessa rang. Hey, my service got cut. Mind spotting me some cash? I didn't hesitate. That's what family's for, right? Then Daniel came along. 6 months without a job. Can you spare a bit, just until I get back on my feet? He asked casually. I bit my tongue. For Haley's birthday 1 year, Vanessa emailed me a wish list with prices included. Nothing on it was under $300. I hesitated, but then Mom called me up. With a syrupy tone, she said, You're not buying her anything. She's looking forward to it. You're doing well, aren't you? That moment marked the beginning of every financial favor falling on me. Vanessa needed a down payment for her car. I contributed without hesitation. Daniel misplaced his wallet. I sent cash that same evening. Mom's utility bill was late. I pulled from my rainy day fund. All it took was that familiar line, You're the responsible one in the family. Not once did anyone ask, How are you holding up? Nobody considered that I budgeted every cent, postponed holidays, and delayed buying things I actually needed. Just a few months ago, I skipped a long-awaited trip with my closest friend to cover Daniel's rent. Nora's name always came up with a smile, like I should be proud, but it was never appreciation. It was a silent expectation. This is your role. Rain drizzled on. I switched on the radio, craving a distraction from the knot in my chest. But nothing dulled the sting of being reduced to a walking wallet. Not a human being, just a living bank account. My phone lit up. Mom again. Vanessa said, You're overreacting. It's just money, honey. We're family. Family. The word now felt like a weight on my chest. I used to believe that kindness would open their eyes one day. Maybe they'd show some gratitude, or even ask, Are you okay? But they never did. To them, I was the helper, not someone who needed help. If you're the one who seems okay, then it's your duty to carry everyone else. I exhaled slowly and unlocked my phone. Every wire transfer, every guilt-laced favor, every no, I whispered to myself so I could say yes to them. I listed them out, not as revenge, but as remembrance. So I'd never let myself be that vulnerable again. The drizzle lightened. A dull ray of sun broke through. I straightened up, gripped the steering wheel. No more turning back. That night, back in my apartment, his words played on repeat. We needed it more than you did. No guilt, no shame, just selfishness served cold. But the sleeplessness wasn't about the cash. It was their complete lack of care. I wasn't letting it slide. Not this time. The next day, I phoned the bank for a detailed log of the past 10 days. 18 pages. I printed and highlighted every red flag. One large transaction, $3,500, came from my mom's IP address. Sure, I'd used her computer before, but never carelessly. Just email and my planner, never banking. Someone saw my details, memorized them, and waited. That weekend, I showed up at Mom's like nothing was wrong. The roast was familiar, but something in the air was off. Vanessa took her usual seat, refusing to meet my gaze. Daniel leaned back casually, pouring lemonade, as if this were just another Sunday. I got straight to the point. I went through my bank statements, I said, setting the documents down. My account was accessed from this house. I didn't log in, which means someone else did. Who was it? Silence. Mom avoided eye contact, poking her salad like my question didn't matter. Dad pretended to read, the paper shielding him like armor. Vanessa finally spoke, her tone flippant, tinged with mockery. It was already open. Don't act like we hacked into anything. I met her gaze. So you're admitting it now? Vanessa shrugged casually. It was already open. You didn't sign out. Besides, you've helped before. I didn't agree to this time. Daniel gently placed his glass on the table with a quiet tap. You always blow things out of proportion. It's not stealing. It's family support. No, I said, voice steady. Helping means there's consent. What you did was take without permission. Mom finally looked up, her tone soft and patronizing, like I was the one being unreasonable. Elisa, you've got no dependents, a steady job, and a quiet life. Vanessa's got a kid. Daniel's struggling. Families help each other. And by sharing, you mean wiping out my savings without a word? My voice wavered, not out of rage, but from hurt. Dad finally folded his paper and looked up, irritation clear on his face. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've always held this family together. That's why we leaned on you. Leaned on me, I scoffed. You invaded my privacy, drained my savings, and now you want to dress it up as trust. That's exploitation. Vanessa's palm hit the table with a sharp thud. Her composure finally cracked. It was survival. Haley's meds, car trouble, the rent. I'm breaking here. You're tired? And I'm supposed to be what? Indestructible? I looked around, at the faces that once meant home. I've been drained too, when I clocked in 60 hours a week to pay off your credit cards. When I said no to a vacation so Daniel could stay housed. When I lived off instant noodles to cover Mom's electricity. I've been running on empty. I stayed silent, thinking I was being kind. Turns out all I did was teach you it was okay to take and never give. Silence stretched across the room, broken only by the steady ticking of the kitchen clock. I rose, folder in hand. At the door, I turned to Mom one last time. If being selfless makes me disposable, then maybe it's time I become someone who takes instead of gives. Daniel scoffed. What now? File a police report? Good luck with that. I met his gaze head on, unwavering. You'll find out soon enough. I left the house I used to call home, with no sorrow, just a quiet, burning certainty. By the time I returned to my apartment, Seattle was cloaked in dusk. The air felt dense, matching the storm still raging inside me. I settled into my chair, laptop glowing in the dim light, folder resting at my fingertips. I had saved it all, receipts, texts, transfers, even ancient screenshots. Not out of paranoia, but because deep down, I knew my quiet giving would one day need a paper trail. So I started sorting. From the $92.50 I paid for Vanessa's phone bill 3 years back, to the biggest hit, $4,500 sent to Daniel for some urgent situation. I had the statements, the receipts, the digital trail, everything. For 3 nights, I built a spreadsheet, logging every expense into tidy categories. I color-coded it all: green for medical, yellow for essentials, red for what I now knew were lies, like how Daniel treated himself to a $1,500 limited edition console right after borrowing from me. I still remembered skipping that ski trip with my team just to afford my insurance premium. Monday morning, I walked into the financial crimes office downtown. Documents printed, USB in hand, complaint form signed. A young officer, Harper, took my case. She skimmed the stack, nodding slowly. This warrants a preliminary investigation. Fraud and unauthorized access. Can you list the involved parties? I do, I replied, handing over the names. Vanessa Walker, Daniel Walker, Donna Grant, my mom, Paul Grant, my dad. I stepped out into the gray afternoon, not vindicated, but lighter. Not for revenge, but because I'd finally chosen to speak. 2 Thursdays later, while in a video call, an unknown number flashed on my screen. I hit mute, stepped onto the balcony, and answered. It was Harper. Ms. Grant, the initial review is complete. We have enough evidence to proceed. Our team is visiting the listed addresses today. I stood still, phone pressed to my ear. Not triumphant, just relieved. At last, someone acknowledged my truth. That evening, as I chopped vegetables, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom, Vanessa, Daniel, on repeat. I ignored every call. Then the messages flooded in. Pick up the phone, Nora. Why would you do this? Tell me you didn't call the police. I left every message unread. An hour later, a text came in from a neighbor. 3 agents outside Donna's place. Their jackets say, Financial Crimes Unit. They asked about you. The next morning, I came in early. As the elevator doors opened, I felt eyes on me, colleagues whispering behind their coffee cups. Then my manager walked up, expression unreadable. A local journalist reached out to ask about a financial investigation with your name attached, he said gently, resting a hand on my shoulder. We didn't disclose anything, but if you need space or time, just let us know. I gave a small smile. It's fine. This is something I need to do. That night, I watched the city lights flicker from my window, each glow reminding me how far I'd come. Vanessa's voice still haunted me. We'd fall apart without you. It was true. I'd kept them afloat. But to them, I was never Nora, just the one who always bailed them out. And finally, the rescuer had drawn a line. I opened my journal and wrote, I am not their bank. I am myself. For once, my name wasn't on a receipt. It was on a page that belonged to me. A person, not an account. The first message arrived early Monday, just as I buttoned my shirt for work. My screen lit up with a phrase I'd seen too many times. Call me. Mom, I let it sit there, unread. An hour later, just as I poured my first cup of coffee, her voicemail landed. Nora, please, this has gone too far. We made mistakes, but this isn't the way to fix it. Just call me, okay? I lowered the mug slowly, a shiver rippling through me. Her voice hadn't changed, still soft, still sweet, like nothing had happened. By noon, Vanessa sent a desperate message. My account's frozen. I can't pay Haley's school. You win. Happy now? That last line made my stomach turn, as if I had started a war, and they were just victims caught in the crossfire. But I wasn't trying to win anything. I was trying to finally breathe. The next morning, Harper called with an update. Nora, we've confirmed the misuse. Vanessa's under review for illegal transfers. Daniel accessed your funds from an unauthorized device. Your parents applied some of the money to a flagged mortgage, and it's being reviewed for recovery. I just sat there, numb. I didn't know whether to feel sad, relieved, or just empty. What hurt most wasn't what they were going through now. It was that none of them stopped to ask how things got this bad. That night, Daniel kept calling. I blocked him after the third attempt. 10 minutes later, a new email appeared from an address I didn't recognize. Nora, please. I've been suspended. They're reviewing everything. I didn't mean for this to happen. Can you speak to them, please? The arrogance, the smug laughs, they were gone now, replaced by desperation, wearing a thin mask of control. But I didn't blink. Thursday morning, a message from Dad popped up. He barely ever messaged me, so even a single sentence made me stop. Got a foreclosure notice, 30 days to pay, or we lose the house. I reread it again and again. Not a sorry, not a shred of acknowledgement. Just a cold update, and the old assumption I'd come running to clean up the mess. I didn't answer. But that night, as I stood by the window watching headlights streak across the glass, I remembered all the lunches I missed just to send money in time, the dinners I missed because Vanessa cried on the phone again. I hadn't just given them money. I gave them parts of my peace, but not anymore. This time, I wasn't returning. That weekend, I drove to Edmonds Beach, a place Dad once took me every summer for fishing when I was a kid. No one knew I was gone. No one checked in. The same voices that once called me their lifeline now only called to fix their own mistakes. That afternoon, another message from Mom lit up my screen. Nora, I'm begging you. I was wrong, okay? But if we lose the house, I won't make it. Please don't leave me. I stared at the screen for minutes. My chest ached, not with guilt, but because I realized she still cared more about the house than me. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay. I placed my phone face down and walked barefoot onto the sand, letting the ocean wind carry away the weight I'd carried for years. I knew this was the hardest chapter yet, the part where I'd be labeled cruel, heartless, and a traitor to my own blood. But also the part where I finally laid down the weight that was never mine to carry. I stood staring at the open sea, and for once, my mind wasn't buzzing with numbers, pleas, or guilt. I was thinking about me, and the slow, quiet calm beginning to settle inside me, piece by piece. 3 weeks later, I walked into HR and asked for a long-term leave. I packed up my life in silence, drove away from Seattle beneath a sky of muted gray, shedding the past like a coat I no longer needed to wear. I landed in Boulder, Colorado, a quiet town I once glimpsed in passing, now a refuge I chose with purpose. Back then, I had barely a few hours to soak in the charm, a cafe with jazz playing low and windows glowing like honey. That quiet stayed with me, and now it led me back here, not to escape, but to rebuild. I found a small studio with mountain views, where light spilled onto white walls like a promise of clarity. Within days, I had flowers blooming in every corner and a desk that belonged to no one but me. I changed my number, disappeared from the noise, and let my company know I'd be working remotely, indefinitely. Oddly enough, once I stopped bleeding myself dry for others, I felt full again, for the first time in years. I slept deeply, ate like a person with no deadline to chase, and thought with a clarity I'd forgotten I was capable of. Just 2 weeks in, Julian called. Nora, he said, your strategy proposal? It's incredible. Have you thought about overseeing the whole West Coast region? I hesitated for a beat. A year ago, those words might have overwhelmed me. I was still tethered to the needs of Mom, Vanessa, Daniel, but now Sunlight danced through the trees outside, and I found my voice. Steady, certain. I'm ready. Julian laughed lightly. Knew it. You were always the natural choice. Congrats, Nora. After the call, I brewed some tea, wrapped myself in a knit blanket, and let the mountain breeze comb through my hair. I'd done it. I'd broken free from the cycle where giving was expected, and being okay was optional. No more 2 a.m. texts. No more frantic voices begging with empty promises. No more waking up with dread, refreshing my bank app like a ritual. Now the messages lighting up my phone came from people who saw me, not what I could give. No one reached into my pockets, only into my heart. How's your day? Dinner tonight? That was it. I hadn't just escaped the weight. I'd uncovered the woman beneath it. One quiet afternoon, I returned to that little cafe. Same table, same soft light. The owner blinked, studying me. You've been here before, right? Asked about that old jazz tune? I smiled. That was me. And now, this is home. He nodded toward the street. This town. It's a good place to begin again. I nodded, letting silence speak the rest. That night I wrote, I spent years keeping a door open for people who only came to take, not to see me, not to stay. Now that door is locked, and the key lives with me. This life didn't come with applause, but the silence was golden and finally mine. I didn't know what the future would bring. Maybe one day Vanessa would call, shaking, but I knew I would never return. Not out of bitterness, but because self-love had finally come first. One chilly fall morning, watering my balcony garden, my phone chimed with an email. I didn't check it at first, but later, with tea in hand, I opened my inbox and paused at the name, Ivy Carter. It took a moment. Ivy, Vanessa's cousin-in-law. I barely remembered her from a few distant family gatherings. She was always the quiet one, lingering on the edges, never saying much. I didn't even know she had my contact, but the subject line said it all. Thank you, Nora. I opened it, curiosity tugging at me. You may not remember me. Ivy, Aunt Grace's daughter. Vanessa had me babysit Haley one summer, and you gave me a ride after her birthday party. I stayed quiet for years, convinced I didn't have a voice. But after hearing what you did, how you stood your ground, I had to write to you. I sat still. Her words landed like gentle drops on the quiet pool I'd been guarding inside. I was trapped in the same loop. My family told me I was fortunate, so I owed them more. I juggled 3 jobs and still wired money home. For my mother, for my brother. When I tried to refuse, they branded me as selfish, ungrateful. But after hearing what you did, how you chose yourself, it felt like someone had lit a path I hadn't known existed. You showed me that saying no isn't cruel. It's self-preservation. It's holding on to what's most precious, yourself. I sat in silence, my hands wrapped around a now cold cup of tea. Outside, the wind stirred golden maple leaves, sending a few softly tumbling to the ground. But inside, something had quietly begun to bloom. It wasn't pride, it wasn't vindication. It was the feeling of being seen, truly understood. Ivy wasn't the first to say something like this. A few weeks earlier, an old college friend had texted me after reading a few lines I shared on my blog. I used to think you were just incredibly strong, like you didn't need anyone. But now, I get it. You were so strong that everyone just assumed you'd always be fine. I read that line over and over again, because for years, I never asked to be heard. I stayed silent, kept it all in. But no one ever taught me that kindness isn't about letting others cross your boundaries. That night, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed a reply to Ivy. I never imagined my actions would inspire someone like that. Thank you for your courage to share. I know it wasn't easy. But remember, you're not alone. You're not selfish. You're just learning to love yourself the right way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I hit send. In that moment, something became crystal clear. I used to think I had lost my family, but the truth was, I was redefining it as the people who love without conditions, give without expectations, and treat others with full respect. The next morning, when I pulled the curtains back, sunlight poured into the room like a gentle blessing. I took a deep breath, feeling nothing heavy on my chest anymore. I was no longer the old Nora, the girl who always stepped aside, who always stayed quiet for fear of upsetting others. Now I was Nora, who knew when to say enough, who knew when to walk away when someone didn't value her. And the most beautiful part, I wasn't alone, because out there somewhere, people like Ivy were finding the courage to step out of the shadows. And if my journey could light even a small part of their path, then every bit of pain I had endured was worth it. On Sunday afternoon, I strolled down the cobblestone path that led to the nearby park, where the maple trees were changing leaf by leaf, from green to gold to fiery red. A little girl rode her bike, hair flying in the wind, while her mother ran behind her, laughing and calling, "Slow down, sweetheart." I paused for a moment, holding a paper cup of coffee, watching them like a scene from a living painting. That image stirred something in me, something I had lost in recent years, a sense of lightness. I used to think I had to do everything to make my family proud. I worked tirelessly, saved every penny, gave up vacations, small dreams, just to earn a good daughter label or a nod of approval from my mother. But they never stopped to ask, was I tired? Did I need someone to listen? What they really wanted was for me to stay quiet and carry the weight. The moment I refused, just once, they labeled me heartless. I used to be terrified of being seen as selfish, terrified that standing my ground meant severing the fragile threads of family. But now that the noise had faded, the late-night guilt trips, the endless justifications, I saw the truth, and it was achingly clear. I hadn't lost them. I had simply reclaimed me. The Nora I've become doesn't wake up each day trying to fit someone else's mold. She lives for herself now. I began embracing the small joys I used to push aside. I finally learned to make risotto, a dish I loved, but always told myself I was too busy for. I treated myself to a bold red dress, the kind I once thought drew too much attention. I enrolled in a Saturday pottery class because molding clay between my fingers reminded me I was still here, still breathing. I reorganized my apartment, hung a giant abstract painting in the living room, not because it matched. One afternoon, a postcard arrived from Jade, an old coworker who'd started a new life in France. On the back, her tidy script read, "You taught me that saying no doesn't mean being unkind. Thanks to you, I finally moved to Paris, a dream I carried since I was 20, but never believed I could chase." Thank you, Nora. I set the postcard on my desk, surrounded by the little keepsakes that held deep meaning. A smooth stone I found during my first solo hike in Colorado. A glass jar filled with dried wildflowers. And the worn leather journal I still wrote in each night. Each one was a quiet part of me, a version of Nora who had stopped living for others' approval. I stopped wishing my family would ever truly get it. I didn't expect an apology from Vanessa, nor did I wait for any unexpected text from my mom. Perhaps one day they would reflect and understand, or maybe they won't, and that was perfectly fine. I once believed that love was about holding on, not letting go. But I've come to learn that real love sometimes requires release, letting people own their choices and letting yourself heal. When you stop giving so much that you forget where you end and others begin, you'll realize that those who truly care for you will never demand that you drain yourself for their benefit. A quote I still recall from an author: "You don't need to sacrifice yourself just to make others comfortable." When I stopped striving to meet their expectations, I realized that true warmth doesn't come from making sacrifices. It emanates from the peace of embracing who you truly are. On that path covered with fallen leaves, I walked leisurely, no hurry, no need to run away. Nora's journey serves as a powerful reminder that you aren't required to sacrifice yourself just to maintain a relationship called family when there is no respect. When you establish boundaries and prioritize yourself, it's not selfish, it's being authentic. Not everyone will get it, but the peace you discover will be worth it. Sometimes, distancing yourself from family isn't a loss. It's the first step to rediscovering who you really are and what you truly deserve. What are your thoughts on Nora's decision? Was she right to prioritize herself over family duties? Let me know by leaving a comment below.